Imagine the year is 1347, and you're trudging through a muddy village in southern France, the air thick with the stench of dung and damp straw. A child's fever lingers despite your neighbour's poultice, and whispers slither through the crowd like eels in a swamp. Witchcraft, they hiss, eyes darting to the healer's hut, your hut, where you've spent years grinding herbs to ease fevers. By dusk, a torch crackles outside, its glow casting shadows like accusing fingers on your walls. The village priest, cloaked in self-righteous zeal, declares your remedies devil's work, and the crowd's murmurs swell into a roar. You clutch your pestle, heart pounding like a war drum, knowing one failed cure has branded you a witch. The absurdity hits hard. Your chamomile tea, a spell? Congratulations, your knack for herbs just turned you into the village's scapegoat. Neighbours you broke bread with now glare, their fear twisting friendship into betrayal faster than a plague spreads. The torchlight flickers, and you wonder if dawn will bring change or mercy. Spoiler, in this paranoid hamlet, mercy's as rare as clean water. The church's shadow looms, and every creak of your door feels like a noose tightening. Step outside, and the mob's eyes burn hotter than their torches. Welcome to 14th century justice, medieval reality TV, where you're the star, and the script ends in flames. Picture yourself in a dim hut, 1347, France, surrounded by jars of dried lavender and sage, their bitter scent clinging to your fingers like guilt. You're a midwife, known for easing births and fevers, but now the village calls your herb shelf a witch's arsenal. A broom in the corner? Evidence of flying to Sabbaths, they say, because apparently sweeping's a crime now. The local baker, whose gout you soothed last month, points at your cat purring by the hearth and swears it's a demon in disguise. Honestly, it's just a lazy tabby, but try telling that to a crowd clutching rosaries like lifelines. The church's latest sermon warned of Satan's minions, and your poultices, once praised, are now hexes because a cow died after you delivered a calf. The logic's as shaky as a drunk on a donkey, but paranoia doesn't care. Your hands tremble as you crush rosemary, recalling how midwives like you were dragged to trial for less, a misplaced needle, a stillborn child. The village square buzzes with gossip, each whisper sharpening the mob's pitchforks. Step into their world, and it's a Tinder nightmare. One wrong swipe, and you're kindling. The irony. Your herbs saved lives, but now they're your noose. By nightfall, the crowd's outside, their chants as bitter as the wormwood you never dared use. In a 1347 French village square, the air is thick with sweat and anticipation, like a festival gone grim. The crowd presses against a rickety scaffold, their shouts blending into a chaotic hum as a woman, hands bound, is dragged forward accused of witchcraft. Torches cast flickering shadows, turning faces into masks of thrill and fear. Half the village is here for justice, the other half for the show. A butcher, still bloody from his morning's work, roars that her curses soured his meat, while a widow swears the accused hexed her crops. Evidence? As flimsy as the straw underfoot, but the mob's bloodlust doesn't care. The priest, perched like a vulture, intones Latin, his voice fueling the frenzy as if Satan himself lingers in the dust. Children cling to skirts wide-eyed as the gallows creak under the weight of judgment. It's medieval reality TV, with higher stakes and worse production values. Some cheer, others whisper prayers, but all are hooked, their dread and delight as tangled as the ropes binding the accused. The scene reeks of unwashed bodies and righteous fury, a spectacle where truth is just a casualty. One wrong word and the crowd's clamour could turn on anyone, even you, watching from the edge. By dusk, the square pulses with a grim carnival energy, and the noose waits like a grim punchline. It's 1347, and you stand barefoot in a French village, the ground cold as a grave beneath you. The mob's jeers ring in your ears, their faces blurred by a haze of torch smoke, as the priest declares your trial by ordeal. Walk the hot coals to prove you're no witch. The embers glow like demon eyes, sizzling with heat that promises agony. Your heart hammers as you step forward, the crowd's chants sharp as shattered bone. The first step sears your flesh, a white-hot pain that steals your breath, and the stench of burning skin chokes you. They say if you're innocent, God will spare you. Good luck with that, because the coals don't care. A child screams, thrilled as you stumble, your feet blistering like parchment in a fire. The priest gazes cold, his sermon about divine justice as useful as a broken plough. Every step is a gamble, and the crowd's betting on your screams. Medieval justice. More like a sadistic game show, and you're the contestant nobody roots for. Your vision blurs, smoke stinging your eyes, but you keep moving, defiance or desperation pushing you through the pain. If you fall, the flames are next. Congratulations, innocence comes with a side of scars. In 1347, a French village church looms like a stone sentinel, its air heavy with incense and dread. The priest, a puppet master of fear, thunders from the pulpit about witches conspiring with Satan, his words echoing off stained glass as villagers' knees tremble. He points to a woman's herbal brew as proof of devilry, conveniently ignoring the fever it cured last week. The congregation, packed shoulder to shoulder, sweats through their prayers, each amen a plea to avoid suspicion. It's a masterclass in paranoia, medieval style. Think of it as a TED Talk for torch-wielding mobs. The priest's sermon paints every shadow as a hex, turning neighbours into spies for God. A widow's cough, a farmer's limp, all branded as witchcraft's taint. Because why solve problems when you can burn them? The air's thick with wax and guilt, and the collection plate clinks with coins for protection from the devil's grasp. Sarcasm aside, the church's grip is iron, twisting faith into a weapon sharper than any blade. By the time the sermon ends, the village is a tinderbox, and one whisper could light the match. Step outside and the bell's toll feels like a countdown to someone's doom, probably yours if you linger. It's 1347 and you're crouched by a flickering candle in your French village hut, guilt gnawing like a rat in your gut. You whispered her name, Margot, the healer, when the priest demanded a witch, blaming her for the cow that died after her visit. Now the village square buzzes with chains and accusations, and your words have turned a friend into kindling. The candlelight dances, casting shadows like accusing ghosts, while your hands shake with cold sweat. You didn't mean for this. Her poultice eased your child's cough, but fear makes traitors of us all. The mobs outside, their chants sharp as nails, and you know Margot's screams will haunt your sleep. Medieval loyalty? About as reliable as a muddy bridge in a storm. You hear the priest's voice calling your whisper God's truth, but it feels like a noose around your heart. Step into the square and you'll see her eyes, wide with betrayal, as the crowd drags her to judgment. Congratulations, you've played the game of survival and won a lifetime of nightmares. The hut's silence presses in, broken only by the distant crackle of torches. Betrayal's cheap, but its cost lingers like smoke. It's 1347, and the wind howls through a French village like a chorus of restless spirits, rattling shutters as you stand in the shadowed square. The accused, a weathered herbalist named Jeanne, faces the mob, her voice low and defiant, spitting words they call a curse. "May your crops wither as my bones do," she hisses, and the crowd recoils, clutching crosses as if her words could summon demons. Folklore swears a witch's curse carries weight. Doors creak at midnight, milk sours by dawn, but you know it's just her last stand, a desperate jab at a village that betrayed her. The embers of a nearby fire glow, casting her face in eerie light, and for a moment you wonder if the tales hold truth. The air's thick with chanting, villagers muttering prayers to drown her voice, but her words linger like a chill you can't shake. Medieval superstition's a wild beast. Feed it fear and it bites everyone. Some say her curse will haunt the village, a spectral debt for their bloodlust. Step closer, and the wind's wail feels personal, like Jeanne's defiance carved into the night. It's not magic, just rage, but in this paranoid hamlet, that's enough to make you shiver. Picture 1347, a French village square, where you stand before a roaring pyre, its flames licking the sky like a hungry beast. The mob's screams pierce the night, demanding you prove your innocence by leaping through fire, because apparently God's a fan of barbecue. The accused, a seamstress branded a witch for a neighbour's barren hen, trembles as she's pushed toward the blaze. You feel the heat singe your skin, the smoke choking your lungs like a fist, and her first step into the flames draws a gasp from the crowd. Her screams are sharp, raw as fabric and flesh sizzle, yet the priest calls it divine judgment. Spoiler, divinity's not on the guest list tonight. The crowd's half thrilled, half terrified, their faces lit by the fire's cruel glow. Medieval justice. It's a sadistic lottery, and you're holding the losing ticket. If she survives, she's pure. If not, well, at least the mob got a show. The flames crackle, spitting embers like accusations, and you can't look away, dread coiling in your gut. Step back, and the smoke follows, a reminder that innocence burns as easily as guilt in this hellish spectacle. It's 1347, and you're a midwife in a French village, your wrists bound with ropes that bite like angry dogs. The mob's jeers crash over you, their faces twisted with righteous fury as they drag you to a splintered scaffold for hexing a child who died despite your herbs. You smell the damp wood, feel the rough hemp scraping your skin, and hear the crowd's chants, half prayer, half bloodlust. You saved dozens of babes, but one fevered death, and you're Satan's bride. The irony's thicker than the mud underfoot. Your hands, once trusted to cradle life, are now tied for death. The priest mutters about divine justice, but his eyes gleam like he's auditioning for a grim fairy tale. Step onto the platform, and the noose looms, its shadow a cold promise. The crowd screams peak. Kids tossing stones like it's a village fair. Welcome to medieval justice, where innocence is just kindling. Your heart pounds, each beat screaming defiance, but the rope tightens and the world blurs. You choke on dust and dread, knowing your skill was your crime. By dusk, the scaffold creaks, and the mob's cheers are your last lullaby. In a 1347 French village, suspicion festers like rot in a wound, tearing the community apart. Doors creak shut at dusk, neighbours avoiding eye contact, their silent stares sharper than any blade. The baker, once jovial, now bolts his shop, fearing his limp might be called a witch's curse. A widow's glance lingers too long, and whispers a brand her a hex weaver. Yesterday's friends are today's spies. The air hums with tension, rustling leaves sounding like accusations in the wind. After the latest trial, the square lies empty, but the weight of distrust lingers like fog. Families huddle by hearths, clutching charms against neighbours they once shared ale with. The church's sermons have turned every cough into a spell, every shadow a threat. Medieval paranoia's a virus, and everyone's infected. A child's laugh cuts off, silenced by a mother's hiss as footsteps echo on cobblestones. Trust is a ghost here, banished by fear's cold grip. The village feels like a trap, each creak and whisper tightening the noose around what's left of community. By nightfall, silence reigns, broken only by the distant toll of a bell counting down to the next betrayal. Step into a dusty attic in a 1347 French village, where the air smells of mould and dried herbs, and your heart skips as the village priest rifles through your belongings. That broom in the corner, used for sweeping dirt floors, now it's proof you fly to devilish Sabbaths, because apparently cleaning's a satanic ritual. Your cat, purring lazily by a cracked window, is declared a demon familiar, its green eyes glinting like a curse in the candlelight. The clinking vials of chamomile and feverfew on your shelf, once begged for by neighbours, are now potions for hexes, according to a farmer who swears his pig died after you passed by. The logic's so flimsy it could collapse under a sneeze, but welcome to medieval CSI Witch Hunt Edition. The priest's smirk says it all. Evidence is whatever fuels the mob's torches. You try explaining the cat just hunts mice, but the crowd outside chants louder, their fear turning your tools into a death sentence. It's almost laughable. Your life hinges on a broom and a tabby. Dust motes swirl as the priest seals your fate, and the attic feels like a tomb. In this village, innocence is just a prop in a grim comedy. The year is 1347, and a French village square pulses with raw energy, the ground blood-stained from past executions. The mob roars, a beast of voices, as a weaver accused of witchcraft is dragged to the gallows, her trembling hands tied with coarse rope. Torches flare, casting jagged shadows, while the crowd's cheers drown out her pleas. Some hurl insults, others stones, thrilled by the spectacle of justice. The axe's thud echoes as the executioner readies his blade, each swinged a grim crescendo to the village's bloodlust. A child giggles, mimicking the condemned's sobs, while a farmer bets on how long she'll scream. This isn't justice, it's a medieval fight club with higher stakes and worse morals. The air's thick with sweat and iron, the earth churned into powdered mud by eager feet. The priest blesses the blade, calling it God's will, but the crowd's hunger is anything but holy. Neighbours who once shared her bread now bay for her blood. Their faces are light with a mix of fear and glee. The gallows creak, the axe falls, and the cheers spike, a sickening hymn to paranoia's victory. Step back and the stench of death lingers, a reminder that in this village, mob rule is the only law. In 1347, you're packed into a French village church, the air heavy with wax and fear. As the priest slams his fist on the pulpit, his voice a thunderclap of righteous fury, he preaches of witches lurking in every hut, their spells behind every barren field or sick child, and the congregation's pews tremble with their shudders. Flickering candles cast his shadow like a spectre, urging the village to hunt Satan's minions before they strike again. It's a performance worthy of a medieval Oscar, but the script's all fire and brimstone, no mercy. His zeal's a spark in a dry field. Last week he named a baker's limp as proof of a curse, and now she's in chains. The crowd nods, clutching rosaries, too scared to question the man who claims God's ear. Sarcasm check. Nothing says holy like turning neighbours into kindling, right? The incense chokes you, the pulpit's pounding a drumbeat for paranoia, and every cough in the pews feels like an accusation waiting to land. Step outside and the village is already buzzing, torches lit, ready to hunt. The priest's fervour isn't faith, it's a match, and the whole town's tinder. It's 1347, and you're on your knees in a French village square, cold stone biting through your ragged skirt as chains clang around your wrists. The mob's jeers drown your sobs, their torches painting the night with cruel light as you beg for mercy, falsely accused of witchcraft for a stillborn lamb. Your voice cracks, pleading you only brewed tea for a neighbour's fever, but the crowd smells blood, not truth. The priest looms, calling your tears the devil's mask, while the scaffold's shadow feels like death's cold hand. Medieval justice, more like a rigged game show where innocence gets you nowhere. Your choking sobs echo, but the mob's too drunk on fear to hear. Someone yells you cursed their well, and the lie spreads faster than plague. The stones under you are slick with dread, the chains heavy as betrayal. You scream your truth, but it's just noise to a village craving a scapegoat. Step forward, and the gallows creak, a grim promise that please don't save you here. Your heart races, defiance fading into despair, as the crowd's hunger seals your fate. Mercy's a myth, and the square's a stage for your final futile cry. The trial's over in your 1347 French village, and dawn breaks through a fog so thick it cloaks the square in ghostly hush. The scaffold stands empty, bloodstains fading into the dirt, but the silence screams louder than the mob ever did. Houses are shuttered, their occupants avoiding each other's eyes, guilt settling like dust after a storm. The baker, who cheered the loudest, now flinches at the distant toll of church bells, each chime a reminder of the healer they burned. No one speaks of her, but the quiet feels like a confession. Neighbours who shared her bread now carry the weight of her screams. The air's heavy with damp and regret, the village a graveyard of trust. Medieval justice promised salvation, but it has left a town too ashamed to whisper. A child's abandoned hoop rolls in the breeze, the only sound besides rustling leaves, as if the village holds its breath. Step through the fog, and you'll feel it. A community haunted not by witches, but by its own hands. The silence is a wound, festering in the eerie calm of a dawn that offers no forgiveness. In 1347, your French village whispers of the executed healer, her name now a ghost story carried on the wind. They say her spirit lingers where the gallows stood, her curse making doors creak and shadows flicker like accusations. By moonlight, creaking trees and whispering breezes fuel tales of her vengeance. Cows sicken, wells dry, and villagers swear they hear her voice in the rustle of leaves. It's all folklore, born from guilt and fear. But in this paranoid hamlet, every shadow feels like her gaze. The mob that cheered her death now bolts their doors, clutching charms against a spectre they created. Step into the woods at dusk, and the air hums with eerie weight, branches snapping like bones underfoot. Medieval superstition's a cruel storyteller, turning a woman's defiance into a haunting myth. A child claims he saw her silhouette in the fog, and even you feel a chill, though you know it's just the wind. Her legacy isn't magic, it's the village's shame, etched into every ghostly tale. The square lies quiet, but her story lingers, a shadow no torch can banish. It's 1347, and you lie awake in your French village hut, the flickering firelight casting shadows that twist like your conscience. You named her, Anne, the Weaver. As a witch, your whispered accusation born of fear when the priest demanded a culprit for a spoiled harvest. Now her screams from the scaffold echo in your restless sleep. each one a knife in your gut. The hearth's glow mocks you. Its warmth are no match for the cold sweat soaking your skin. You told yourself it was for the village's safety, but the heavy heart pounding in your chest knows better. Your words lit her pyre. Medieval loyalty's a cheap coin, spent the moment fear takes hold. You see her face calm as she bound herbs for your sick child, and wonder if you've damned yourself instead. The silence of your hut is deafening, broken only by the crackle of logs and your own uneven breaths. Step outside and the village feels like a trap. Every neighbour's glance a mirror of your guilt. Congratulations, you played the game of survival, but the prize is a lifetime of doubt heavier than any chain. In a 1347 French village, the square buzzes like a hornet's nest. The air thick with dust and the clamour of voices hungry for a show. A carpenter's wife, accused of a witchcraft for a neighbour's barren cow, stands on a splintered scaffold, her eyes wide as the mob hurls insults and rotten apples. Torches flare, painting the scene in garish light, while the crowd's fervour turns the trial into a grim carnival. Think medieval reality TV, but with real stakes. The priest proclaims her guilt, his voice booming over the jeers, as if God himself signed the verdict. Children dart through the throng mimicking her pleas for laughs, while a farmer bets a chicken on her execution's speed. The scaffold groans under the executioner's weight, each creak a countdown to blood. It's not justice, it's entertainment, and this village is sold out for the spectacle. The air reeks of sweat and dirt, the ground churned by eager feet chasing a front row view. A woman faints, another cheers, their voices a chaotic hymn to Patrinoia's grip. The blade gleams, and the crowd holds its breath, addicted to the thrill of someone else's doom. In 1347, the French village church stands like a fortress of fear, its polished crosses gleaming under candlelight as the priest's booming hymns drown out the crowd's trembling hands. Another witch trial ends, and the church's grip tightens, its power cemented with every pyre lit and every scream silenced. The priest declares victory over Satan, his voice dripping with smug certainty, while villagers clutch rosaries, too scared to question the divine verdict that burned their neighbour. Hypocrisy's the star here, condemning curses while peddling fear like a market hawker sells fish. The air's thick with incense and dread, the pews packed with souls trading freedom for salvation. Yesterday's healer is today's ash, and the church calls it justice, but it's just a power grab dressed in holy robes. Step into the nave and the hymns hit like a war drum, each note a reminder that dissent means damnation. The crowd's fervour masks their terror, but their shaking hands betray them. Medieval faith. More like a protection racket, and the church is cashing in. The bell tolls and the village bows, not to God but to the fear that rules them now. It's 1347, and your French village lies hollow, its streets empty as the witch hunt's echoes fade like dying cries. The gallows stand silent, but the scars of paranoia linger, etched into every shuttered window and wary glance. Families who once shared feasts now lock their doors, haunted by the neighbours they betrayed. Herbalists, midwives, friends turn to ash for a whisper of witchcraft. The air carries a lingering dread, heavy as fog, with no torch bright enough to banish it. The church promised safety, but delivered only graves, leaving a village fractured by its own hands. Step through the square, and the silence is a dirge, broken only by the wind's faint moan, carrying the ghosts of screams. Medieval justice sold salvation, but the cost was human. Trust, kindness, lives, all burned away. A child's abandoned shoe lies in the dirt, a relic of a community that devoured itself. The fields are barren, not from curses, but from fear's cold grip. This is the true toll. A village alive, yet dead in spirit, its heart buried with those it condemned. It's 1340, and you're a knight in northern France strapping on armour that clangs like a blacksmith's mistake, your shield emblazoned with a snarling pig. Your coat of arms, your medieval logo, scrims defiance, chosen to shock foes and flaunt your grit, but the jeering laughter from your own ranks stings worse than any lance. The vibrant cloth flaps in the wind, its stitched bore gleaming under a cloudy sky, as you march toward a skirmish in the 100 Years' War. Peasants gawk, whispering it's bad luck to brand yourself with a farmyard beast. Medieval branding's a bold move, but this one's backfiring. Your squire snickers, and even your horse seems embarrassed, snorting as rival knights point and howl, step onto the battlefield, and the pig's stare feels like a cosmic prank, drawing every eye before a sword's even raised. Pride swells, then sours, your banner's a beacon, but for mockery, not glory. The air's thick with dust and taunts, your armour creaking under the weight of your choice. In this chaotic age, a pig on your shield is either genius or a one-way ticket to ridicule. Spoiler, the crowd's betting on the latter. Picture 1340 in a cramped French workshop where the air hums with the creak of looms and bear the sharp scent of dye. You're a tailor hunched over a knight's coat of arms, your fingers pricked raw from months of stitching a lion's mane in gold thread that shimmers like a king's ransom. This heraldic masterpiece, meant to scream nobility on the battlefield, takes so long you've missed 2 harvests. Congratulations, your life's now a single banner. The knight demands perfection, as if his survival hinges on every stitch, but you know one muddy clash will ruin it all. Medieval branding seems a scam. Months of toil for a cloth that'll be shredded by a lance or mistaken for the enemy's. The loom groans under the weight of silk. Your candle sputters, and your back aches like you've carried the knight himself. Sarcasm check. Nothing says honour like bleeding for a logo nobody can read in the chaos of war. The workshop's a prison of thread and ambition, each stitch a reminder that glory's for knights, not the hands that make it. By dawn your fingers tremble, but the banner's done, a fleeting masterpiece for a battlefield farce. It's 1340, and you're charging across a muddy field in France, your coat of arms a bold red stag, flapping wildly as swords clash and chaos reigns. The 100 Years' War turns the battlefield into a blur of banners, but your ally, mistaking your stag for the enemy's deer, swings his blade at you with a shout. Clanging steel rings in your ears, your shield barely catching the blow as you yell your name into the din. Fat lot of good that does when everyone's screaming. Your vibrant emblem, meant to scream loyalty, is now a death warrant in this medieval mix-up. The air's thick with dust and sweat, banners blurring into a kaleidoscope of bad decisions. Knights fall, friend and foe indistinguishable, as your stag becomes a bullseye for misplaced fury. Talk about a branding fail. Your tailor spent months on this, and now it's your funeral flag. The ground shakes with hooves and curses, each clash a reminder that heraldry's less about honour and more about surviving your own team. Step back and the battlefield's a chaotic mess, your heart pounding as you dodge allies as much as enemies. Glory? More like a deadly game of medieval Guess Who. It's 1340, and you're a knight trudging through a muddy French field, your shield emblazoned with a silver fish that seemed bold in the armoury, but now feels like a cosmic joke. The 100 Years' War rages, and as you raise your clattering shield, rival knights howl with laughter, their snickers cutting sharper than their swords. Fish knight, they jeer as your own squire stifles a grin and his loyalty as shaky as the soggy ground. Your coat of arms, meant to scream valour, instead sparks a medieval roast session. Congratulations, you're the punchline of the battlefield. The air's thick with mud and mockery, your armour creaking under the weight of embarrassment. You swing your sword, but the enemy's too busy laughing to take you seriously, their lances half raised between chuckles. Medieval branding. More like a viral flop, and you're trending for all the wrong reasons. The fish glints in the dim sun, a beacon of your regrettable choice as hooves churn the field into a swamp. Step forward, and the snickers follow, each one a reminder that glory's harder to catch when your shield's a seafood special. In 1340, you're a herald in a candle-lit French chamber, your fingers stained with ink as you scribble rules for coats of arms on crackling parchment. The code's a labyrinth, lions for courage, blue for loyalty, no 2 knights' banners alike. Yet it's treated like holy scripture for medieval branding. One wrong stripe and a noble's honour is toast, one right crest and he's a legend, or so the knights think. Your candle sputters, casting shadows over charts of griffins and boars, as you labour to keep the battlefield from turning into a logo free-for-all. Sarcasm check. Nothing screams chivalry like arguing over a shade of red while arrows fly. The rules are strict. 3 colours max, no copying the neighbour's eagle, but knights still botch it, waving near-identical banners into chaos. The air smells of wax and dust. Your quill scratching out a system as rigid as a king's decree. Step into a tournament, and your code's a fragile thread holding back a riot of egos. Medieval heraldry's a game of symbols, but when swords clash, it's your parchment that takes the blame. It's 1340, and you're in a French tournament field, the air electric with roaring crowds and the clash of splintering lances. Your coat of arms, a blazing gold eagle, flaps proudly on your banner, catching every eye as you charge, armour clanging like a war hymn. The stands erupt, peasants and nobles alike cheering the kaleidoscope of heraldic colours, each knight a walking billboard of pride and ambition. A rival's lance shatters against your shield, the crowd's roar spiking as dust swirls and banners snap in the wind. Medieval tournaments are Coachella with higher stakes. Glory's the prize, and a bad hit means you're eating dirt. Your eagle gleams, but so does your rival's near-identical hawk, spouting shouts of confusion from squires scrambling to keep score. The chaos is thrilling, a blur of flapping silks and cracking wood as knights vie to etch their symbols into legend. Step into the fray and the energy's addictive, every cheer fueling your charge. But one wrong move and your banner's just a rag in the mud, your honour as fleeting as the crowd's applause. In 1340, the French battlefield lies quiet, its banners faded like ghosts of a forgotten fight. The coats of arms, once vibrant lions, boars, even fish, hang tattered, their colours bleeding into the mud of 100 years' war skirmish. Knights clung to these symbols, believing they carried honour or divine favour. But the silent fields tell a darker story. Pride's a curse that outlives the fight. Peasants still whisper of a griffin banner that cursed its bearer to fall, their tails weaving magic into threadbare cloth. The air's heavy with damp and decay, the quiet broken only by a raven's caw, as if mocking the glory that drove men to die for a scrap of silk. Medieval heraldry promised immortality, but it delivered chaos, mistaken identities, botched battles, egos sharper than swords. Step through the stillness, and the banner's remnants feel like tombstones, each one a monument to human hubris. The honour they swore to uphold lingers only in stories fading as fast as the cloth itself. In this haunted calm, the true curse is clear, symbols outshine the men who bore them. It's 1602, and you're in a dimly lit London apothecary shop, the air thick with dust and the metallic tang of ground bone. Your pestle grinds against a mortar, crushing a human skull into powder, each scrape a grim reminder of the corpse it came from. Sold as a cure for seizures, they swear. The flickering lamplight casts shadows like spectres, and the powdery grit stings your nose, clinging to your fingers like guilt. This is Renaissance medicine, a morbid smoothie of bones and desperation, peddled to the sick with promises of miracles. Your customers, pale and trembling, will swallow this dust, believing it holds life's essence. Congratulations! You're basically a grave-robbing barista. The shop's shelves groan with jars of remedies, each one a testament to humanity's weird obsession with cheating death. Step closer to the mortar, and the grinding's rhythm feels like a dirge, each crunch a step deeper into the macabre. The air's heavy, the dust choking, and you wonder if the cure's worse than the disease. In this age, health's a gamble, and you're grinding the dice from someone's skull. In 1602, you're in a musty London warehouse surrounded by crumbling wrappings and the clink of coins as merchants haggle over imported Egyptian mummies. These ancient corpses, plundered from desert tombs, are ground into mummy powder for apothecaries, sold as a cure for everything from bruises to plague, because nothing says healthy like eating a 2,000-year-old corpse. The air reeks of decay and greed, the crates packed with brittle bones that crumble under a touch, each one a grim jackpot for the Renaissance pharmacy game. Merchants boast of their haul's potency, as if the dust of pharaohs carries more magic than a peasant's skull. Spoiler, it's all just dirt and desperation. Step into the shadows, and the wrappings rustle like whispers of forgotten lives sold for a quick profit. The trade's a bizarre eBay for the dead, and London's elite are buying, swallowing history with a grimace. Sarcasm aside, it's a thriving business, turning tombs into tonics and morality into... The coins keep clinking, but the stench of this trade lingers longer than any cure. It's 1602, and the London scaffold creaks under a fresh execution, the air heavy with dripping blood and the crowd's grim cheers. The executioner, hooded and grim, doesn't just swing the axe, he's a side hustle entrepreneur selling the warm, fattened blood of the condemned to apothecaries for medicinal brews. Each severed head is a payday, its fluids bottled for desperate patients who think a criminal's essence cures their aches. The scaffold's wood is slick with crimson, the air thick with iron and greed. As his greedy whispers haggle prices before the body's cold. Medieval side gigs? This one's as dark as it gets, turning death row into a gruesome Etsy shop. The crowd disperses, but apothecaries linger, coins clinking for a vial of the freshly dead. Step closer, and the stench of blood and betrayal hits hard, the executioner's blade glinting like a merchant's scales. It's visceral horror, sanctioned by a city that sees no sin in profiting from slaughter. The creaking platform and hushed deals linger, a testament to a world where death's the hottest commodity. It's 1602, and you're in a dim London apothecary shop, your clammy hands clutching a vial of skull-infused tincture, its bitter smell promising to cure your pounding headache. The apothecary swears this murky liquid, flecked with bone dust, holds life's essence, but your stomach churns as you tilt it to your lips. The taste is vile, earthy, metallic, like licking a crypt's floor, and your throat rebels, gagging on the thought of what you're swallowing. Flickering lamps cast shadows that dance like ghosts, and your heart races, dread coiling tighter with each sip. Renaissance medicine's a grim gamble. Choke down a dead man's dust, or let the pain win. The vial's cold in your grip, its contents a reminder of the grave-robbed skull it came from. Step back, and the apothecary's grin feels predatory. His cure a ticket to nausea at best, damnation at worst. Your hands shake, the bitter aftertaste lingering like a curse. In this age, health's a deal with the dead, and you're not sure who's winning, except it's definitely not you. It's 1602, and you're skulking through a London graveyard under a moonlit sky, your shovel scraping against damp earth as you dig for the freshest corpse. The air's thick with the scent of rot and rustling dirt, each spadeful fueling the booming corpse medicine in trade. Apothecaries pay well for bones to grind into cures. Shadows twist in the moonlight, and every creak of a branch feels like the dead whispering your name. You're no thief, you tell yourself, just a supplier in a city that craves the dead's dust for health. Medieval side hustle, graveyard edition. The thrill pulses as you uncover a coffin, its wood splintered, the body within a grim payday. Step deeper into the grave and the silence is eerie, broken only by the thud of dirt and your pounding heart. A dog howls in the distance and you freeze, half expecting a ghost to rise. This is no noble quest, just a dirty job for a desperate world where skulls fetch more than gold. The soil clings to your hands, a reminder that every hall carries a curse of its own. In 1602, London's crypts lie silent, their stillness a stark contrast to the frenzy of the corpse medicine trade that fueled apothecaries' shelves. The city swallowed ground skulls and mummy dust, chasing health with the desperation of a fading pulse, but the cost was more than coin, it was humanity itself. Grave robbers, executioners and apothecaries grew rich while patients choked down death's remnants, their hope tainted by the graves they fed on. The air hangs heavy with lingering guilt, as if the dead whisper judgment from their plundered tombs. Renaissance medicine promised miracles, but delivered a moral rot, each cure a theft from the departed, each dose a deal with despair. Step through the empty streets, and the silence feels like a reckoning, the city's pulse weakened by its own hunger. No ghosts haunt these crypts, but the weight of violated rest lingers, a shadow no tonic can lift. This is the true cost, a society that traded reverence for remedies, leaving only echoes of guilt in its wake. Hey you there, settling in for a quiet night. Picture this, a soft hum from a fan in the corner, the world outside fading to a whisper. Tonight we're diving into a story that's tender, raw and real, the long often hidden journey of people born with Down syndrome, from ancient firesides where their presence sparked wonder to modern streets where their voices rise. This tale is about how humanity has stumbled, learned and grown. It's not just history, it's a mirror showing us who we are and who we could be. So grab a blanket, dim the lights, and let's wander through time together. Oh, and if you're vibing with this hit, that button subscribe and drop a comment, where are you tuning in from and what's the clock saying? I love knowing who's out there sharing this moment. Long before science named it, before anyone scribbled Trisomy 21 in a textbook, there were just people, mothers, fathers, neighbours, watching a child who moved a little slower, smiled a little wider. Imagine a dusty village, maybe 500 years ago, where the air smells of wood smoke and damp earth. A child is born, their face softer eyes, almond-shaped, their giggle a quiet melody. No one knows why they're different, but they're here cradled in the arms of a family who doesn't need a diagnosis to love them. We don't have their stories written in clay or stone, but we have something better, their graves. In France, archaeologists found a child from the 5th century, laid to rest with care, their small bones tucked gently among others in a sacred plot. Not cast out, not shunned, but honoured as if to say, "You were one of us." That burial whispers across centuries acceptance wasn't always a stranger. In a world without medical charts, some saw these children as quieter souls, maybe closer to the spirits. You can imagine a mother, her hands rough from grinding grain, carrying her child a little longer, speaking to them in softer tones. Maybe their differences weren't a burden, but a gift, a reminder of life's fragile beauty. In other places, though, the story shifted. Some cultures wove myths around difference, divine blessings, or cosmic warnings. A child with Down syndrome might be revered as touched by the gods or feared as a sign of trouble. It all depended on the stories people told themselves, the flicker of firelight shaping their truths. These ancient traces, burials in Rome, the Andes, even older sites, tell us something profound. People with Down syndrome have always been here, woven into the human tapestry. They weren't a problem to fix or a flaw to erase. They were part of the family, their lives a thread in the endless weave of existence. As you lie there, letting the world slip away, think of those quiet graves, each one saying, "I was here. I mattered." And as we drift deeper into history, we'll see how that truth sometimes faded only to shine again, stubborn and bright. Sleep well, and let's keep going. Now let's step into the bustle of the classical world. Think Athens with its marble statues, Rome's crowded forums, or Egypt's sun-baked temples. The air's thick with incense, the chatter of philosophers, and the clink of coins. Here difference wasn't just noticed. It was a story, a symbol, a puzzle. For people with Down syndrome born into this swirl of myth and meaning, life wasn't defined by medicine, but by the tales their communities spun. As you settle deeper into your pillow, imagine being there, the world alive with mystery, where every face carried a hint of the divine or the dangerous. In these societies, a child with softer features, slower speech, or a gentler way might spark wonder or unease. No one knew about chromosomes, so they reached for stories instead. In Greece, they might say such a child was touched by a god, maybe Apollo, gifting them a quieter wisdom. In Egypt, myths spoke of children born under strange stars, their lives tied to fate. You can picture a marketplace, the scent of roasted figs and dust in the air, where a child with Down syndrome toddles through their laughter, drawing smiles or wary glances. Some saw them as omens, others as blessings, but rarely just as kids. They were woven into the culture's dreams and fears, their presence a spark for tales of gods or curses. But it wasn't all lofty metaphor. In some villages, families kept these children close to their homes, filled with the clatter of pots and the warmth of shared meals. A father might carve a wooden toy, noticing his child's slower hands but brighter eyes. In others, though, fear won out children hidden away or left to the mercy of superstition. Hindu texts from ancient India spoke of karmic cycles, suggesting every soul had a purpose, but purpose didn't always mean acceptance. The truth is, reactions varied, wildly shaped by the village elder's mood or the priest's latest vision. You can almost hear the whispers. Is this child a gift or a warning? What strikes you as you drift towards sleep is how these people were never invisible. They were part of the human dance, their lives shaping stories, even if those stories weren't always kind. No rights, no protections, just the raw pulse of humanity, sometimes cruel, sometimes tender. As we move forward, that pulse will shift, cloaked in dogma then science, but never quite losing its beat. For now, rest easy, knowing these ancient souls still speak to us, their echoes soft but stubborn. Picture yourself in a medieval village, the air sharp with frost, the scent of wood smoke curling from thatched roofs. It's the kind of cold that seeps into your bones, where the church bell's clang is the loudest thing for miles. In this world, between the 5th and 15th centuries, life is ruled by faith, fear, and the heavy hand of the church. For a child born with Down syndrome, with their gentle eyes and slower steps, This is a time of shadows where difference often carries a weight heavier than stone. As you sink into your bed, let the crackle of a distant fire pull you into their story, one of silence but also stubborn survival. The medieval world didn't have words like genetics or disability. Instead, it had whispers, superstitions that filled the gaps where understanding faltered. A child who spoke late, whose face bore softer, distinct features, might be seen as a sign of divine displeasure. You can imagine the village square muddy and bustling where news of such a birth spreads like wildfire. Was it the mother's sin they'd murmur their breath fogging in the chilly air? A curse, a test. The church towering over every thought often framed these children as evidence of spiritual failing, maybe the devil's mark, maybe God's judgment. Without science to anchor them, people leaned on fear, and fear, as it does, could turn cruel. Many of these children were hidden away, tucked into the dim corners of homes, their laughter muffled behind thick walls. You might picture a mother, her hands chapped from spinning wool, keeping her child indoors away from prying eyes. Some were sent to monasteries where monks or nuns were tasked with caring for the afflicted. Sometimes this meant a quiet life-bread shelter, a place to exist, but too often it meant isolation, far from the warmth of family, their days blending into a grey routine of prayer and silence. The world outside moved on its records, barely noting these lives as if they were ghosts slipping through history's cracks. Yet even in this age of dogma, there's a flicker of something human. Not every heart was hardened. Some families, some monks saw beyond the fear, recognizing a soul as sacred as any other. As you drift towards sleep, think of those unwritten stories, a child's giggle echoing in a cloister, a quiet act of care that no chronicle caught. These lives, though shrouded, endured their presence, a silent challenge to a world not yet ready to see them. The story's not over, it's just beginning to stir. Let's linger in that medieval world a bit longer, where the glow of a hearth casts long shadows, and the night feels endless. Amid the harshness of superstition and rigid beliefs, there are glimmers of kindness like stars breaking through a clouded sky. For people with Down syndrome, often pushed to the edges of society, these moments of compassion were rare but real proof that love could bloom, even in the hardest soil. As you settle deeper, the hum of your fan, blending with the night, lets uncover these quiet acts that history almost forgot. Imagine a small village, the kind where everyone knows the creak of your door. A child with Down syndrome is born their slower movements and bright eyes setting them apart. Instead of whispers or exile, some families chose love over fear. A father, his hands rough from ploughing fields, might sit by the fire teaching his child to stack kindling patient with their fumbled tries. A mother might weave a simple tunic, her stitches tight with care, knowing her child's smile lights up the room more than any candle. These weren't scholars or saints, just parents who saw their child not a symbol and held them close. In monasteries where many such children were sent compassion, sometimes broke through the cold stone walls. Picture a nun, her robes smelling of herbs and dust, guiding a child's hand to knead dough, her voice soft as she hums a hymn. Some monks called these children innocents, believing their gentle nature brought them closer to God. In these sacred spaces they might help tend gardens or carry water, their days woven into the rhythm of prayer and work. Not every monastery was kind, but these exceptions where a child was seen not hidden mattered. They were lifelines in a sea of silence. Art too holds clues to this tenderness. In a few medieval paintings, figures with features resembling Down syndrome appear not as outcasts, but as shepherds, angels, or quiet saints. Were these portraits of real people loved by an artist's eye? We can't know, but they feel like whispers of defiance saying, "You belong." As you drift off, hold on to this even in an age that could be cruel. There were those who chose care, who saw beauty where others saw difference. Their quiet rebellion sowed seeds for a future still unfolding. Now let's step out of the medieval fog and into the sharper light of the 17th and 18th centuries, where Europe's buzzing with new ideas telescopes, scanning the stars, quills, scratching theories on parchment. The air smells of ink and ambition, but for people with Down syndrome, this shift from faith to reason brings a new kind of gaze, the clinical stare of science. As you nestle into your blankets, the hum of your fan a steady lull. Imagine a world waking up to observation where difference isn't just a mystery, but something to be named, studied, and too often judged. Before this era, folks with Down syndrome lived in the margins, their lives shaped by whispers of sin or spirit. But now science steps in, trading old myths for new labels. Picture a physician's study cluttered with books and glass vials where candlelight flickers over notes. In 1866, a British doctor, John Langdon Down, sits here scribbling a paper that'll change history. Working at the Royal Earlswood Asylum in Surrey, he notices a group of patients with shared traits almond-shaped eyes, round faces a gentle demeanour. He doesn't know about chromosomes, nobody does yet, but he sees a pattern and calls it Mongolism, a term rooted in the racial biases of his time, comparing their features to outdated ethnic stereotypes. It's a painful misstep by today's standards, but back then it's a spark of recognition. Down's work isn't cruel in intent. Unlike many of his peers, he pushes for kindness, better care, structure, dignity for those he studies. You can almost hear his pen scratching his voice soft as he describes patients who laugh easily, who move with a quiet grace. Yet his paper does something bigger than he could have guessed. It makes people with Down syndrome visible in a new way. No longer just idiots or afflicted, they're a category, a condition to be studied. This is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it paves the way for research for understanding what we now call trisomy 21. On the other, it reduces people to traits their humanity sometimes lost in the cold language of diagnosis. As you drift towards sleep, think of those patients in Earlswood, their lives now under a microscope. They're no longer invisible, but they're not fully seen either. Not as individuals with dreams or quirks, like how one might love the taste of warm bread or the sound of rain. This scientific dawn is a turning point, but it's just the start of a long road, one that'll twist through darker places before finding light. Rest now, and we'll keep walking this path together. Let's fast forward to the 19th century, where the world's churning with steam engines, crowded cities, and the hum of progress. The air's thick with coal smoke and the clatter of industry, but for people with Down syndrome, this modern age builds new walls, ones made of brick and bureaucracy. Institutions rise like fortresses, promising care but often delivering confinement. As you sink deeper into your pillow, the night wrapping around you, picture these sprawling buildings, their corridors echoing with footsteps, and let's explore a chapter that's both sobering and pivotal. Imagine a small town where a family cradles a child with Down syndrome, their laughter bright but their steps slow. Doctors with their starched collars and serious nods tell parents, your child's better off in a facility-specialised care safety structure. It sounds kind, even progressive, and many believe it. These institutions, big grey places with names like Salem or Home, pop up across Europe and America, funded by governments eager to organise society's edges. But step inside and the truth isn't so tidy. The halls smell of damp and disinfectant rooms packed with rows of iron beds. Overcrowded, underfunded, they're less about care and more about control. For a child with Down syndrome, life here is rigid. You wake to a bell, wear a scratchy uniform, follow a schedule carved in stone. Some are lumped with others who have wildly different needs, mental illness, physical disabilities, leaving little room for personal growth. You might picture a young girl, her eyes bright, trying to hum a tune, but there's no one to teach her, no space to play. The staff, often untrained, do what they can, but kindness is stretched thin. Families told to trust the system visit less and less, their hearts heavy with guilt. Out of sight, out of mind, and society sighs with relief thinking the problem is solved. But there are glimmers of light. In some places, a caregiver, a rare soul with a warm laugh, might sneak an extra biscuit to a child, or teach them to fold linens, seeing their smile as reward enough. Friendships form quiet bonds between residents who share giggles or hold hands in the yard. These moments, small as they seem, are lifelines. As you drift off, hold this image, a world that thought it could lock away difference yet couldn't snuff out its spark. This era is a hard one, but it's setting the stage for voices that'll soon rise loud and unbroken. Let's step into the grim shadow of the early 20th century, where the world's buzzing with factories, telegraphs, and a dangerous new idea dressed up as progress. The air's thick with the soot of industry and the arrogance of science gone astray. For people with Down syndrome, this era brings a chilling turn as the eugenics movement sweeps through nations, cloaking cruelty in the name of perfection. As you settle into your bed, the hum of your fan a soft anchor. Imagine a time when humanity's worst instincts hid behind clipboards and cold logic. This is a heavy tale, but it's one we need to hear. Picture a lecture hall packed with men in stiff suits nodding as a professor preaches about improving the human race. Eugenics, born from a warped desire to control nature, labels people with Down syndrome as unfit, their gentle smiles and slower steps deemed a burden. It's not just whispers now, it's policy. Governments from the US to Sweden pass laws allowing forced sterilizations. Imagine a young woman with Down syndrome, maybe 20, her eyes bright with trust, taken to a hospital under the guise of care. Without her consent, without even her understanding, her chance at motherhood is stolen. The paperwork calls it protection for society, but it's a theft of her humanity, as cold as the steel table she lies on. This isn't fringe thinking. It's mainstream, backed by universities, doctors, even charities. You can almost hear the scratch of pens signing orders, the clink of medical tools. In some places like Canada and the UK, thousands with intellectual disabilities face this fate, their futures erased to fit a twisted ideal. Families are told it's for the best, their hearts breaking as they're pressured to comply. The world obsessed with efficiency and progress turns away, pretending these lives don't matter. It's a betrayal wrapped in science where difference becomes a crime. Yet even in this darkness, there's resistance. Picture a nurse, her hands trembling, slipping an extra blanket to a patient defying the system's coldness. Or a parent refusing to sign the papers, their love fiercer than fear. As you drift towards sleep, hold on to these acts of defiance, small as they seem, are sparks in the night. They whisper of a fight to come, a time when these wrongs will be named and challenged. For now rest knowing this story's not done, it's turning toward light. Now let's tread carefully into one of history's darkest corners, where the air feels heavy with betrayal and loss. It's the 1930s and 40s, and Nazi Germany's grip tightens its ideology, twisting science into something monstrous. For people with Down syndrome, this is no longer just exclusion, it's extermination carried out with chilling precision under the T4 program. As you lie there, the world outside fading, let the soft hum of your room carry you into this somber chapter, where humanity's failure cuts deep, but courage still flickers. Imagine a small German town, the streets quiet except for the rumble of trucks. Families receive letters official and crisp, promising better care for their disabled children at special clinics. A mother, her hands worn from sewing, reads one hope flickering in her chest. She sends her child, maybe a boy with Down syndrome, his smile wide as he waves goodbye. But those clinics aren't sanctuaries, they're traps. The T4 program, named for its Berlin headquarters at Tiergartenstrasse 4, is a machine of death. Children like this boy, with their gentle eyes and slower words, are among the first targeted. Some are starved, others poisoned by gas or injections, their deaths hidden behind lies of pneumonia or heart failure. This isn't chaos, it's bureaucracy stamped and signed. Doctors and nurses, people who swore to heal, become executioners, their clipboards listing lives as unworthy. By 1941, when public outcry forces the program's official end, over 70,000 have been murdered, many with Down syndrome. But the killing lingers in secret, quieter, but no less brutal. Picture a hospital room, sterile and cold, where a child's laughter is silenced forever, their name erased from records. It's a crime not just of war, but of humanity itself, a reminder of how far fear can twist us. Yet even here there's defiance. A nurse slips a warning to a family risking her life. Parents hide their children, their love a quiet rebellion. As you drift off, hold this image, a world that tried to erase these souls, but couldn't snuff out their memory. This horror plants seeds of change, a reckoning that'll grow louder. Sleep now, knowing their lives, though stolen, still echo, demanding we never forget. Let's ease into the mid-20th century, where the world's picking up the pieces after the horrors of war. The air smells of fresh ink from newspapers and the faint buzz of radios crackling with hope. In the wake of Nazi atrocities, including the T4 program's unthinkable crimes, a quiet revolution begins for people with Down syndrome. Parents once told to hide, their children start raising their voices, demanding dignity, and a place for their kids in a world that's learning to value every life. As you sink into your pillow, the hum of your fan a soft lullaby picture. This shift, a spark of love turning into a movement. Imagine a small living room in 1950s America, the scent of coffee lingering, where a group of mothers and fathers huddle around a table. Their children with Down syndrome, maybe a girl with a shy grin, or a boy who loves stacking blocks, aren't cases to them. They're family. These parents are done with silence. They've heard the doctor's cold advice, institutionalize, forget, move on. But their hearts say no. They form groups like the National Association for Retarded Children, later called the ARC, swapping stories, fears and dreams. You can almost hear their voices trembling, but fear saying our kids deserve better. These aren't politicians or celebrities, just everyday folks with stubborn love. They knock on doors, write letters, and push for laws to crack open public schools, which once barred kids with intellectual disabilities. Picture a mother, her hands calloused, from work standing before a school board, her voice steady as she demands a desk for her child. Across the ocean in the UK and Australia, similar groups sprout parents sharing newsletters and hope. The civil rights era fuels their fire, tying their fight to a bigger call for justice. Every life, they argue, deserves a chance not just to exist, but to belong. As you drift towards sleep, think of those early meetings, the clink of coffee cups, the rustle of papers planning a better future. This isn't just advocacy, it's a